Lesson 5 is all about designing 21st century learning environments. Our goal here is to understand how to select and use appropriate learning strategies, technology, media, and materials to achieve 21st century learning in different PK-12 environments. So we're going to talk a little bit about instructional strategies and how instructional strategies can actually support your 21st century learning environments because they are connected together. There are two major categories of instructional strategies. First, there are teacher-centered ones, where learning is directed specifically by the teacher, and then there are student-centered, where the students are actually largely responsible for their own learning. Let's go into a little bit more detail about these. In teacher-centered, you're going to have utilize strategies and technology media materials are steps of the Assure model. Teachers direct the learning through presentations, demonstrations, sometimes drill and practice, even though we don't really want to use that anymore, and tutorials. Teacher-centered strategies are going to engage the students in higher order thinking, and the ways you can integrate technology are through clickers or PowerPoints, videos, interactive whiteboards, tutorial software, and podcasts. In student-centered, we can require the learning to participate in different ways. It's a step in the Assure model, so that will help us. The teachers are more of the facilitators rather than the directors. Students have decision-making capabilities in this process, and it's truly authentic, hands-on, engaging learning through discussion, cooperative learning, games, simulation, discovery, and problem-based learning. There are 10 common types of instructional strategies that can be used in classrooms. Let's go through each of those 10. First, the presentation. The presentation is a source that provides information to the learners. You can do this through a lot of different ways. You can just, physically be talking to your students. You can use internet sites, audio, video, or peers. The advantage is that you present it one time and you're done. You can use note-taking strategies to collect notes from the presentation, and you can also have students do your presenting for them. The limitations are sometimes it's difficult for some of your students. It definitely can be boring at times, and sometimes students have a hard time getting all the notes at one time. There are ways to integrate technology into presentations, such as interactive whiteboards, PowerPoints, clickers, and those kinds of items. A second strategies are demonstration, where learners are going to view some kind of a skill or procedure that can be learned. The characteristics are you can do this in whole group, small group, or individual, and it can be observation and not necessarily hands-on. The advantages are students get to see before they're doing something. It's definitely safety is definitely an advantage because you're doing it typically for them. The limitations are that the students aren't doing hands-on learning, which we know is very important, and the non-flexible pacing, where the students have to watch basically you do that. Now, the ways you can integrate technology are using digital cameras to show things like on slides on a microscope or different things like that. There's different kinds of equipment and definitely videos. You can show demonstration videos to the students. A third strategy is drill and practice. I typically don't like to use this anymore, but there are reasons why you want to use this strategy. It does increase your fluency for students and it should include feedback. The advantages are there should be corrective feedback going on. So if a student misses something, that feedback is being provided to tell them why they're missing it, how they're missing it, and how to fix it. There's built-in practice in drill and practice. The limitations are it is repetitive, potentially boring, and it's not as adaptive as it should be. The ways you can do that are through different interactive software packages like Study Island or Think Through Math. You can work with partners, you can do flashcards, and you can do worksheets. Tutorials are where learners work with an agent for practice and feedback until competency is achieved. It is typically independent and one-on-one, and it chunks the information in a way that helps the students learn the information at their own speed. The advantages are it's definitely independent and self-paced, and it individualizes and personalizes the instruction. The limitations, once again, it's potentially boring, it can get frustrating, and there's a lack of guidance sometimes, so that can definitely cause frustration for your students. You can use software packages or audio recordings to have students do tutorial work. Discussions are the exchange of ideas and opinions among students and the teacher. You can do this in a small group or large group settings, and the advantages are it's interesting and challenging and inclusive and provides opportunities for new ideas. Limitations are it's potentially you can limit participation in some cases. Sometimes it's unchallenging. It may not be enough to depth to provide students with a challenge. Difficulty levels and age appropriateness are always limitations for discussions. You can do video conferencing, you can do concept mapping, you can do online discussion boards. All these are ways you can discuss. Cooperative learning strategies is a grouping strategy. Students work together to assist in each other's learning. They can work in small groups, they can be either formal or informal groups, and the students can be placed by individual role or part of the team. So you have individual group accountability, so you might have one team leader and the other students do other things that they're responsible. It does provide interpersonal and leadership skills, and if done properly, it allows students to reflect. The advantages are learning benefits, definitely. Students learn from each other and from their peers, which is a good thing. And it can be formal or informal, and you can do it across content areas. The limitations are size is a limitation because you don't want to get into large groups because then people don't get a chance to actually discuss things. Um, Sometimes teachers overuse cooperative learning, and that's not good either. You don't want to do cooperative learning all the time. You can do different media production software, presentations, all kinds of different things you can do to facilitate cooperative learning. In problem based learning, students actively seek solutions to problems situated in the real world. It's very lifelike and it's very structured. The advantages are this kind of learning is very engaging for students. They like the idea that there's context for their learning, and you can provide different levels of complexity. The limitations are it's sometimes difficult to create on behalf of the teacher. It's very hard to create problem based learning appropriately. I would not use it all the time for elementary students or younger students because it would not be age appropriate. And problem based learning is definitely time consuming, so that's something you want to consider before using this strategy. Technology integration includes different kinds of software packages, concept mapping such as Webspiration. You can use databases and web quests. Games are creating a competitive environment for students. Learners follow rules to attain a challenging goal. It is motivating, challenging, promotes problem solving skills, and allows students to recognize patterns. The advantages are number one, obviously, most students do enjoy gaming. So that provides a lot of engagement for the students to learn, and you can match that engagement to the outcomes of your lesson. You can provide gaming in a variety of settings, and it definitely gains their attention. The limitations are sometimes students get overly competitive, and that can be a concern. Levels of difficulty, sometimes if you make a game too hard or too easy, it doesn't achieve the learning objective. Sometimes games are also expensive to use. And you can also have students misdirect the intention. They could be playing the game instead of using it to learn something. You can do digital games, paper based games, and use the internet for free games that have learning tied to it. Simulations. Whoops. Simulations allow students to, sorry about that. Simulations allow students to confront a scaled down version of a real life situation. You can do that either as a class or a small group. You can experiences may not be possible in the real world, so you could do kind of like an online simulation, if you will. The advantage is that simulations are safer than real world environment activities. You can recreate history, they are hands on, and you can do it for a variety of ability levels. Limitations include questionable representation, complexity. If it's too complex, students aren't going to understand it, and sometimes simulations take a lot of time. You can do a lot of things in the physical sciences and math with simulations. You can do role playing, and different software packages will show simulations to students. Discovery is inductive inquiry approach fosters a deeper understanding of the content. Students are using a scientific method. You do have to provide guidance for students in discovery learning strategies, and it scaffolds the learning. The advantages are that it definitely is engaging for students. Repeated steps allow students to master something, and students have a lot more control with their own learning. The limitations are it does take a lot of time. Um, Preparation is also critical on behalf of the teacher, so you have to spend a lot of time preparing for that. And sometimes students can misunderstand something in discovery because if they think something is correct and they move forward with that, they misunderstand the lesson. You can utilize a wide variety of digital tools for discovery. You can use cameras, GPS, video, and lots of online tools as well. So, let's talk about learning context. Learning contexts are contexts that represent ways in which you can engage your students in achieving their learning outcomes. So let's talk a little bit about what that means. There are 5 common learning contexts. One is face to face, which is the most prevalent one. Distance learning, where students are in one location and peers and the teacher are in another location. Blended instruction, where you have both synchronous and asynchronous. Independent study, where teacher prepares context and materials and students work at their own pace. And then informal study, where you're preparing students with technology and it's a very informal nature of the study. Finding resources, it's very important if you're teaching in today's world. You need to find things that are free or inexpensive to use in the classroom because schools don't have a lot of money to spend on all these great resources out there. So you really have to do your homework and find some free and inexpensive materials for the classroom. Things such as obviously open source websites that have productivity tools or collaborative tools that are free. You can do a lot of video, audio, and images from the internet. You can find printed materials, video, and different kits, CDs and DVDs, such as the Library of Congress website has a lot of things you can download and use. Lots of times museums have things you can download and use. The advantages of free and inexpensive materials are typically they usually are up to date if you're getting it from a good source. They provide in-depth information. You can use it in different ways, and students can manipulate things such as using the video and audio and create their own projects with that. The limitations are sometimes they provide bias or advertising that's embedded in the free or the inexpensive material. Sometimes they promote special interests, so you have to watch for that. And sometimes there's limited quantity, so you might not be able to have one um, kit for every student in the class. You have to look at how do we obtain materials and how do you evaluate the materials. So I would suggest always looking at some kind of a rubric to evaluate all the free and inexpensive materials. At this point, if you have any questions about this lesson, please give me an email or a phone call, and I'll be more than happy to assist you.